Okay.
Dobry wieczór. Bardzo miło mi Państwa powitać, całą publiczność stacjonarnie na Uniwersytecie Artystycznym w Poznaniu oraz publiczność online na kanale uczelni, na kanale YouTube. Dzisiejsze spotkanie właściwie inauguruje rok akademicki dla studiujących fotografię na Wydziale Fotografii, więc mi bardzo miło Was wszystkich widzieć. Część z Państwa rozpoczyna studia, po raz pierwszy jest na uczelni. My w tym trybie funkcjonujemy hybrydowym, jak chodzi o zajęcia z teorii i praktyki obrazowania przez cały rok akademicki. Bardzo jest mi miło też oczywiście powitać naszych znakomitych gości wraz z kuratorką wystawy Gregora Seylera w Galerii Centrala Anką Grigorczyk, która nam zaraz gości przedstawi.
Pokrótce.
Witamy Państwa. Pozwolę sobie przejść na moment na angielski, bo mamy także gości wśród publiczności anglojęzycznych. So it's nice to have you here, dear students from Studying English program. My pleasure is to start this semester having such a wonderful guests today here. We inaugurate with our students of photography at the Faculty of Photography at the University of Arts the academic year, starting this class of theory and practice of imaging. So welcome Gregor Seyler, Krzysztof Pijarski, Anka Grigorczyk from Centrala Gallery, who will introduce our guests in a moment.
Okej, ja powiem parę słów po polsku. Witam wszystkich, Anka Gregorczyk, Galeria Centrala w Poznaniu. Wielką przyjemnością dla mnie jest to, aby móc przywitać jednego z moich ulubionych fotografów, którego wystawę widziałam 2,5 roku temu w Berlinie, Gregor Seyler, którego wystawa The Polar Silk Road zrobiła na mnie tak ogromne wrażenie w Berlinie, że stwierdziłam, że muszę ją sprowadzić do Poznania i to się po wielu próbach udało, więc jestem przeszczęśliwa. Wystawa jest w Galerii Centrala, jutro otwarcie o 18:00, od 18:00, a dzisiaj spotkanie autorskie, które poprowadzi Krzysztof Pijarski, który przyjął również moje zaproszenie do tego, aby poprowadzić ciekawą dyskusję i rozmowę na trudny temat dotyczący Arktyki, ale przez pryzmat fotografii. I Gregor Seyler, o którym też Krzysztof opowie kilka słów, ja z przyjemnością w galerii opowiem więcej. Natomiast to, co mogę dzisiaj powiedzieć, to jest znakomity fotograf, artysta wizualny, który potrafi zrobić naprawdę wiele, żeby osiągnąć to, co jest niezwykłe obrazowo, ale też fizycznie, bo wykonać fotografię w 55-stopniowym mrozie naprawdę nie każdy potrafi i nie każdy potrafi tak wiele zrobić, żeby stworzyć tak piękną sztukę. Także mam nadzieję, że będą Państwo czerpać przyjemność z dzisiejszego spotkania i oddaję głos Krzysztofowi i Gregorowi.
Okay, so we're switching to English. Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be able to discuss your project, Gregor. So maybe a few words of introduction are in order so that you get a proper introduction of the artist who is the protagonist of this meeting. So Gregor Seyler, he was born in Schwaz in Austria. He's a photographer whose work explores the intricate relationship between architecture, landscape, and society. And you will see quite a bit of that today. He's known for his large format photographs of remote and inaccessible places, which he captures with a detached and objective eye. And you will see there are never people in his photographs. Like almost never. Almost never. Seyler studied communication design with a focus on photography and experimental film at the Dortmund University of Applied Sciences and Arts in Germany. He later earned a master's degree in photographic studies from the same institution, and since 2005 he's been working as a freelance photographer and artist. Seyler's work has been exhibited internationally in numerous solo and group shows. His photographs are held at the collection of the Rupertinum in Salzburg, the Belvedere and the Albertina in Vienna. Seyler's photography is characterized by its focus on non-places and artificial landscapes. He is interested in ways in which architecture can be used to create illusions and manipulate perceptions. His projects often involve extensive research and travel to remote and inhospitable locations. We will see a lot of that today. And some of his most important projects, apart from the Polar Silk Road, just to name two, the Potemkin village. This is a series that documents fake and artificial settlements around the world, from military training grounds to replicas of European villages in China. And Closed Cities, that is from Gregor's website. The long-term project investigates closed communities in Algeria, Western Sahara, Argentina, Azerbaijan, Chile, Qatar, and Russia. By means of refined architectural and landscape photography, I visualize these otherwise effectively invisible, artificially created urban agglomerations that are hermetically sealed off from the eyes of the world, either by walls or by their hostile surroundings. So there is like a consequence in your work, as we will see, to show places that are not accessible to sight, not that accessible to sight, and put them in a wider socio-political context. Maybe just to name a few important exhibitions: Unseen Places at the Kunsthaus Wien, the Polar Silk Road at the National History Museum, the Potemkin Village at Rencontre d'Arles in France, and Closed Cities at Taxis Palais Kunsthalle Tirol, Innsbruck, Austria. Please welcome Gregor Seiler.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Thanks a lot for the invitation. I'm very glad to be here. Good afternoon, and thanks for coming. Today we will give you an insight and an impression of this general topic regarding the Polar Silk Road. I prepared some pictures just to give you a first idea, and then afterwards we move to discussion and go deeper into the topic. But I would prefer just to sit down, if it's okay for you, so I can control the notebook. Well, the term the Polar Silk Road is originally coming from China, so it has been first mentioned in the Chinese Arctic White Paper in 2018, and describes the Chinese Arctic policy for the upcoming decades. So of course China is not part of the Arctic region, but wants to get a piece of the cake. So they started to invest a lot in infrastructure projects like port projects or airport projects, but also they buy licenses for raw materials, which will be available in the near future. The main motive for all these developments is, of course, the climate warming. So I never wanted to create a project dealing alone with the climate warming, but I recognized if the ice would not melt, those new trading routes would not, wouldn't be possible to develop. New raw material deposits wouldn't be available, and that all causes geopolitical tensions between the Arctic neighboring countries, but also observer countries like China, for instance. So a consequence is that all these nations start to invest a lot in their military infrastructures. So not only Russia, but also the US and also the European countries. Most of the people think they know a lot about the Arctic, but I recognize that soon ends at a point where the people aren't able to distinguish between the North and the South Pole. So the polar bears in the South Pole, the penguins in the North. So most of these military facilities are invisible for the public. And that's why I start my research work. I have to say or to mention that most of the pictures have been shot or made in restricted areas, so military areas, but also areas which are restricted by or due to economical reasons, by companies, for instance, oil, gas, diamonds as well. And it's a very sensitive topic. So people don't want you to have, they don't want to give you permission, and they don't want they don't want to have any pictures of these places. So I am not really a journalist, even if the research work and all the organization in advance is kind of an investigative journalistic work. But the output is always an artistic output, so that's my aim, that the works are placed on the art market. And I don't want to create spectacular pictures, even if the shooting situations are often spectacular. I want to reduce yeah, the picture, or I want to get the greatest reduction possible. So lectures or talks like this one enables me to give you yeah, an insight into the background, what is happening behind the camera and near the camera. So those insights, yeah, describe the pictures in another way. But let me show you some works. I start here and also in the book, and it's also part of most of the exhibitions, with 4 maps. We developed those 4 maps based on lots of different sources, sources coming from secret services and NGOs and so on. And we combined all this information and reduced it to 4 maps, and those 4 maps describe the 4 main topics of the Polar Silk Road project. So a graphic, in this case, that's what I soon recognized, is able to show lots of information with one view. So photography reaches its borders very soon. And here I combine photography with graphics and also lots of texts. So we have the military installations, which are currently existing around the North Pole. The North Pole is always in the center, so it's an unusual view of our planet. And we see here the currently used trading routes, so the Northern Sea route, the Northwest Passage, and this future transpolar new route. So that's the direct route crossing the North Pole. And scientists say or expect that this direct route, which is much shorter than the currently mainly used Suez Channel route, until 2050 without icebreakers all year long. So it's much cheaper and faster. And that's why China is as well interested in such routes.
And until recently, it was not able to go this way without icebreakers. Even with icebreakers, it was impossible.
It was impossible, yeah. And due to the to the global warming, it's getting realistic very soon. Here we see all the raw material deposits which are currently exploited, and also the future ones. And we have another problem up there. So there's a huge area, what you see here, where where the territories, the borders are unclear. So the different Arctic neighboring states claim for these territories, which also causes geopolitical tensions. I give you now some impressions of places I've been. So it's not only dealing with military installations, but also with science a lot. Research stations or facilities which are finding out the reasons for the global warming or how the climate was in the past. Especially here, for instance, I was at the center of Greenland, so at a height of about 3,000 meters. I didn't know that in advance that it's that high, but completely flat, so it's like it's very dry, like a desert, a very surreal place. And there they dig, or they do deep ice core drilling. They go back about 100,000 years in climate history, and that allows them to create models for a future, how the climate maybe will change in the near future. So it's a very exposed place. Most of the research work takes place underground in the ice because it's protected. So the place or the tents you see are the tents for the scientists, and well, where I also slept. And this black dome is kind of where you can eat. There's a kitchen there and so on, where you can relax. So that's one of the entry tunnels into the underground structures. I always show these architectural structures in context of landscape, that outsiders get the possibility to get an idea, at least, how those structures, or where those structures are located. And for me,
maybe, Gregor, what we could also throw in and give something to think about to our viewers is that what is very interesting in those structures that you're photographing is that the function is quite fluid between military and research, in the sense that, for example, that facility that Gregor just showed, it's called East GRIP, the East Greenland Ice Core Project, and it is really dedicated to climate research. But the Americans, they built a huge military base underneath the ice after World War II in Greenland, which was then let go of, yes?
Camp Century.
Yeah, yeah. And it's this kind of legendary base, yes? The base from which this East Grip is supplied used to be an American military base. What's his name? Kangerlussuaq, yes?
Ah,
Next
yeah,
to it.
the starting
Yes.
point, you
Yes.
mean. Yeah,
Yeah.
Kangerlussuaq, yeah. That was
So you have all these things.
Exactly, yes.
You have the Royal Air Force base in Flying Dales, which is on the one hand, which has a military function, but at the same time, these radars are also used to map debris in the orbit of the Earth. Yes, so these facilities that we look at, they are very often this kind of they have this strange status between military and research. Yes, defense and long-term views of our Earth. Yes.
Yeah, very often those structures also exist nearby due to logistical reasons. So that's what the different institutions and research stations, facilities, the people there told me that they need the infrastructure of military or of armies because they don't have the resources, they don't have the money to get there. So regarding Greenland, for instance, we have been brought there with the US Air Force because they have those aircrafts, this Hercules aircrafts with this key. They are able to land on the ice. So, but they are only flying on site, so they don't trust their machine or the infrastructure of the instruments. So, and always two, because if one explodes or something happens, you have a problem in this region. So they really depend on the infrastructure of the military or the different armies around the world. And of course, I also needed the permission of the armies. I needed the permission to get up to these aircrafts and also to get the possibility to photograph there. So it's very nearby. Still nowadays, it was always like this, but it's still the same. And the architecture itself is also very often similar because it must work. Yeah? It must work also during these very difficult weather conditions, heavy storms, very low temperatures, so like this structure, for instance, that the ice is able to bear to melt away, for instance, yeah, exactly. That's what I was fascinated in. This very reduced architecture helped me, of course, to reduce the picture generally. What I also need to say, that you understand my artistic approach, that architecture for me is not only constructed landscape, but a carrier of stories, of contents. So usually I develop the story in advance. The story is the most important first step for me. And if this story is convincing enough, it brings me to the particular places which are strong enough to carry the story, to tell the story. So this narrative background is fundamental. Of course, the aesthetic visual surface is very important for me too, but it does not work without the content in the background. And so therefore I depend on interesting structures. Then I need the permissions, and organizing those permissions often needs months and years. Regarding this underground submarine bunker, you will see later, it needed more than 4 years to get the permission to get in. So you need to be really consequent. Of course, this process is accompanied by doubts, and very often I said to myself, why are you doing that? Just leave it. It costs lots of energy, and that's why my projects always are long-term projects between 4 and 5 years. And it's also a reason why the book is very important for me, because the book is able to show the whole body of work.
And to contextualize the pictures, no?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe we can say that this is Canada, no?
That's Canada, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Tuk toyak tuk.
tak, 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 yeah.
Tak toyak tak.
I learned some Inuit words, yeah. But you can also say tak, that's easier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is
That's an old, it's not oil rig, it was one of the first islands where they exploited oil, but it's not a swimming one, so it was fixed on the ground. And this is an abandoned one, so they brought it into Tak Bay, where it's surrounded by the frozen ocean, and still is still existing here like a symbol for the past, but also for the present and for the future, because Canada constructed a huge highway between Inuvik, so that was the end of the Dempster Highway, to Tak, about 200 kilometers, and Tak has about 500 inhabitants. So it was a huge highway, and there was an oil boom there in the 70s, but then there's a moratorium, but this will end. So they constructed this highway for the future, and there's still lots of oil and gas there. So this steel island is a symbol for everything for me, and it's a very calm and neutral picture, but contains a lot. Of course, you need to know the context, or that's part of it.
Yeah, but also in terms of form, when you look at it, it looks like a fortification. Yeah?
Exactly, yeah. That's true, yeah.
When you think of, like, you know, old drawings of and old fortified cities, you know,
an old Mad Max movie, maybe. Yeah? That's, also
that's true. But you know, look at the history of Europe. It looks like a fortified. It looks like a fortified city. So it also plays this kind of very symbolic role, I think, in your project, that it becomes this kind of bulwark. Yes, in the middle of
it's huge.
It's huge.
It's
yes.
really huge. Yeah. And it was strange to walk across the frozen ocean and surround this object like on another planet. So yeah, no, that's what I'm looking for. And there was another reason why I have chosen Tak. Tak is one location where you find one of those radar stations which are part of the North Warning System. So the North Warning System is the modern version of the DU line. The DU line has been constructed during the Cold War. It consists of, let's say the North Warning System nowadays consists of about 50 radar stations, starting in Alaska, across Canada. In the Cold War, there have been 2 or 3 more stations in Greenland, but they are abandoned. I wanted to go there, but it wasn't possible. So the Air Force said no. The US Air Force said no. They are still existing like frozen objects in the landscape. Would be fantastic, but abandoned. And of course, it makes no sense to take pictures of all 50. I've chosen one because they are similar regarding the architecture. And the Canadians gave me the permission, the Americans not. So I tried to go to Alaska for, again, 2 years or something. And I almost could manage it, but you know, the most important general, and this guy said, and finally no. So I always depend on the political situation in a particular country. I was working with the US Army when Obama was president. It was easier, but under Trump, everything is blocked. So that's also another problem I faced. Sometimes.
Maybe what it would be worth adding here, we will go back to that definitely in the discussion, is that there's this strange temporality to the structures, because when you look at them, you might think of them as the future, yes? That they are these kind of futuristic, high-tech objects, but these are from the past, and some of them are defunct. And there's also this whole issue of the environmental impact of these structures, because they were built using very often toxic materials. So they are leaking into the ground now, and because it was super expensive to build them, of course, but it's even more expensive to deconstruct them. Yes? So they're just left there as these kind of alien presences in the landscape, and while they decay, they poison the soil basically. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, some of them have been demolished, some disappeared, some have been reactivated. It's the same like what happened or still is happening in Russia. Lots of those relicts from the Cold War are reactivated. Lots of new installations have been constructed, like Franz Josefsland. They're currently based about 1,200 soldiers. So I also wanted to go to Franz Josefsland, but yeah, of course, when I'm calling in Moscow and starting in English, they just stop it. So
you have to learn Russian.
It's very, very difficult to get, to realize anything in Russia. Currently, it's impossible. Yeah, you mentioned before Filing Dales. That's the Royal Air Force Station. It's one of the pictures you also can see in the exhibition. Of course, UK is not part of the Arctic, but this particular radar station is connected with two other ones in Alaska and also in Greenland. Thule Air Base, maybe you've heard of it, and Clee Air Force Station in Alaska. And all three of them control the northern hemisphere, direction north, especially direction east, but also the whole orbit, so space, and they control each object surrounding our planet the size of a golf ball. And the British send all the information directly to the Americans, and they organize all the data. So that's why I have a connection regarding the content, and I said, okay, yeah, the Royal Air Force gave me the permission to enter and to photograph the object. The Americans did not, so I said, okay, yeah, I have to deal with this compromise that works. And regarding the architecture, they are very similar. So that's why I included UK. And you see some more pictures. That's the submarine bunker I mentioned in the beginning, based.
Before you continue,
yeah.
I just want to throw in a thought. We're
Okay,
going to go back
sure.
to it again, definitely. You just said something, because I would like you to hold on to this image, that these three radar stations can map objects the size of a golf ball in the Earth's orbit. Yes. So they are basically very powerful visualizing machines, and they're used, among others. One is for missile early warning system, yes. But the other thing is, like, when we have spacecraft that have to re-enter orbit, they map all the debris that is on the Earth's orbit, so that they can map a safe approach, that these spacecraft do not get destroyed by the trash that is basically in our orbit, yes, or by other or by satellites.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah.
But this aspect of visualization, of machines of visualization, will be important in the context of talking about your photographic practice in the north, how it kind of, how we can think of, like, what does it mean to show a territory, what does it mean to visualize something today? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm already finished with this first part. Yeah, that's Olafsvärn. We will go back to this location too later on. So that's a huge underground or a submarine bunker constructed inside of a granite mountain. It's also a relic from the Cold War, but reactivated now. So this is the place where I needed more than 4 years to get the permission. So it's like a James Bond movie. I always wanted to get there. It's really amazing. And I wanted to get there, or wanted to photograph or document this location without submarines. Everyone knows how submarines are looking like, so I wanted it empty, not only without people, but also without submarines. So yeah, it's a huge, you find tunnels. I went inside by car, so the only thing you see from the outside is the gate from the fjord, so the submarines are able to enter the mountain directly from the fjord, and inside you have ammunition halls, torpedo halls, you have headquarters and so on, and offices. It's really huge. And I think that now, because everything changed since I've been there 3 years ago, it wouldn't be possible to photograph there anyways. It's the same working with the Norwegians at the Norwegian-Russian border. I think it wouldn't be possible anymore, because it was hardly possible 3 years ago, and now things, really changed. So, yeah, that's also in Norway. That's Kirkenes, a port which will be part of the Polar Silk Road too. As a symbol, Yeah. Norway also wanted to construct a railway between Kirkenes and Rovaniemi in Finland to connect the European railway system with the north, or to realize a connection to the Polar Silk Road. But this railway would go through indigenous region, and it has been stopped. So I don't know if they ever will construct it or finalize it or not. But these are the plans. So that's why I said Kirkenes is a good example for this. And of course, it's in a hot zone because it's only some kilometers away from the Russian border. When I was there, the border was already closed between Norway and Russia, and I don't know how it's in the moment, if the borders are open or not. But this time, the borders have been closed.
I don't know, but right after the full-scale invasion in Ukraine, this border between Russia and Norway was a big part of the one of the escape routes of Ukrainians.
Yes.
So a lot of Ukrainians came through there.
So they opened it because I was there at the end of 21, and it was closed. It was just 2 months before the war in Ukraine started. So yeah, but I've read this that it was a refugee line. Okay, it's also a scientific part. Also in Norway, they come to an end.
That was ice cut, yes?
That's part of ice cut, yeah, that's true. We can talk about this later.
Yeah.
So.
That's called the European Incoherent Scatter Scientific Association.
Nicht schlecht.
Yeah. It's one of the most advanced radar systems on Earth, and now they're building a new one, which is going to be ridiculous. It's going to be able to map ionized air in the mesosphere, like in 3D resolution. Yes, so it's this kind of, these are really incredible visualization machines that they are building there.
There's other locations in Svalbard and also in Sweden, so they are all connected. But I have chosen the one in Norway because it's big, and regarding the motifs, it was really interesting for me. So now I have just 1 minute or 2 minutes, some video notes to give you an impression of the working conditions, and then we can go on with our discussion. So it's Olaf Svern again. That was the first part.
Yeah, that was the first part. And of course, I have to say I'm sorry, I mixed up the names, of course, because what we saw before, it was not ice cut, it was Marcy, no? that array.
No, that's Marcy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
the
what
other
you
one
saw.
is part of IceCAD. It looks
Okay,
similar, but
it was similar.
That's IceCAD.
So it was
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I was afraid I would mix. I
No,
would
no.
mix them up.
But both is in Norway.
Yeah, both are in Norway.
Yeah.
And so maybe I was thinking of talking a little bit about the conditions under which you're photographing, since you showed us your picture.
Yeah, some insights. So
Yeah, that
nothing
selfie
spectacular.
and some films.
Some notes.
No, because it is also something that is interesting, because we see all these spectacular pictures. We see it very clearly, and they're very composed and very poised. Yes. At the same time, the conditions under which they were taken, are quite the opposite. So you have like strong winds, or an ice storm, or you have minus 55 degrees Celsius. Yes, and it's really hard to kind of imagine even to work under such conditions. And we had this short conversation before we started today, like why you don't use, for example, a digital camera in these conditions. Maybe you could talk a little bit more about that.
Sure. Should I first start the pictures?
Yes.
And then
yeah.
we can
Yeah.
just give me a moment. I need to. Sorry.
We have a different
Just it.
slideshow with the pictures from the project that you could look at while.
Okay.
We go on.
Yeah, well, different reasons. This question, I hear this question regularly, to be honest. Why are you doing this with that heavy stuff? Because it's about 30 kilos, even if I reduce the weight for those trips, 30 kilos. And it's risky because if something happens and if I lose the negative, I lost the whole motive. And it's a personal approach that I only take one picture per motive. Two reasons for that, because on the one hand, I don't have endlessly material with me. And on the other hand, it increases my consciousness, I mean, if you know that you lose the picture, you work in a different way. So it's a different approach than with a digital camera. If I have the time, I walk through the space, I get an idea of the space and decide which details, which aspects of this space are important enough or strong enough to create a portrait of this place. No matter if it's an urban zone or if it's a single building, a single structure within a vast landscape. Very often I don't get this time frame because they tell me, okay, you have 3 hours for this city, for instance, even if we discussed something different. It also happens. So I also need to be flexible on the one hand, as long as you can be flexible with such a kind of camera. And I love this slow, statical working process with the view camera that also influences, of course, the picture's language, the imaginary. That helps me to find the reduction, to find the silence within a space or within the picture, finally. And another advantage is, again, the weight. The weight of the camera, it stabilizes the camera itself, so that allows me to work during stormy conditions in combination, for instance, with long-term exposure. So, for instance, when I was working with the Norwegian Armed Forces, I was there in the polar night. So you have long-term exposure, then you have strong winds, really strong winds. And then it was necessary to do that invisible because it wouldn't have been possible it should not or must not happen that the Russians see me photographing Russians' facilities from the other side because of espionage. So that was difficult, and the weight of the camera helped me that the final result is still sharp. As well, I like the charming film, the grain, so it's still high quality. If you blow the pictures up for exhibitions, for instance, it's still very convincing from the technical point of view. And that's my personal approach. And of course, because you mentioned the temperatures, when you're working during very low temperatures with a digital camera, the batteries are empty within seconds or minutes. I tried it just to test it. and I'm much more independent with a mechanical camera because I don't need any energy. So the only problem is there's no exact rule or limit that about when it starts with -50, that film starts to break. So that's why I'm mainly using large format films at these temperatures because I don't have to touch them. Roll films would break. So that's the main risk, that you lose the film, but the camera itself is standing a lot, really a lot. Some things, some details break sometimes, some metal parts, of course, but you can repair it. And so we are very flexible with this kind of camera in comparison to a digital camera.
And so the other thing that comes from that is that, of course, there are all these technical obstacles and difficulties of getting there and photographing in such conditions or under such conditions. But then, of course, when you look at the pictures themselves, they have that kind of sublime aesthetic, no? Of, you know, this kind of discovery of vast places, yes? A kind of feeling that we might not have anymore because we feel like everything has been mapped and photographed already, yes? So your pictures, they still have that kind of aspect. Although, I mean, it's all there. It's not like nobody saw it before, because when you look at the history of you know, Arctic or Antarctic photography, which started in the 19th century, it was all about like discovery, yes? That was something that was not seen before and not viewed before. And so pictures taken from there, you know, in the 1850s, for example, I mean, the first expedition was the expedition of Sir John Franklin in 1845, 1848. So that was like really long time ago. So, but this expedition perished, and then there were a couple of expeditions that tried to recover that expedition. So it was all these kind of stories, yes. And so here it is something that, okay, maybe we know that it's there, but still it's not that accessible, and still you have that kind of sense of discovery, yes. But what I really think of, like, when I look at your pictures, is that this kind of inaccessibility is much less because of we don't know it, but because it is not legal to look at it. Yes, because this is this one aspect that you talked about. That one of the aspects that takes the most of your time or most of your work is actually getting access to these sites, or getting permission to photograph, and I think that is really something that is really important and an interesting aspect of your work, that you really try to kind of show these places that are hard to show or to photograph, not because they're inaccessible, but also because there are legal obstacles, yes, because they're military or research facilities, and nobody wants us to see them.
Yeah, exactly. That's also my main motto, to enable an access to the outsiders. Yeah? That's how I see my main, the main job as a photographer or artist, to open the doors to such invisible places, and to tell the stories which take place behind the curtains or behind the fences. And this is not from the journalistic point of view, but from the artistic point of view. So. Yeah, that's the reason why the research phase and the organization in advance takes so much time, and is a very, very important part, because without those phases, taking pictures there would be impossible. So, and yeah, and another thing is that I try to be prepared as good as possible, because once you're there, it's very difficult to react, yeah? And without the preparation, it would be difficult to work there. And as I said before, very often the time frames are short, and I need to deal with it. One example, for instance, when I was in Azerbaijan, in Neftashlar, it is oil rocks. It's the largest city on the sea worldwide. It's strategically, well, still strategically very important from the military point of view. And I was organizing this trip for 1 year because I needed SOCAR, the oil company, which brought us by helicopter to the island. And then they said, yeah, you have 2 or 3 hours for a whole city. So it's really a whole city with several thousand inhabitants in the middle of the sea. It's really, really awesome. And then you say, okay, the light is not good, it's during the day, nothing is good now, but I can't repeat it, so I get the chance just once, and I need to deal with that. So, and I feel much more comfortable if I can prepare and control everything in advance to avoid such situations. But yeah, nevertheless, something like this happens from time to time, and you have to deal with it. So, yeah, that's of course when you deal with secret places or with restricted areas, you need to be flexible. That's also those permissions are finally also the influence the final selection of the photographs. You only see where I've been successful. Of course, I tried to get to many other places too. Here, I wanted to go to Russia. Everything was organized. I wanted to go to Pivek because, of course, Russia needs to be included in such a project. It's the Arctic power. But then the pandemic started. About 3 days before I wanted to leave, my country has been just blocked. I wasn't allowed to leave anymore, nothing. And then, yeah, it was a fluent switch to the current political situation. So that's, yeah, it's really a shame. I was frustrated, but I mean, you can be frustrated and stop everything, or you go on and find an alternative way to tell the story. So that's why I went back to Norway and to the border to Russia, and to at least include a symbolic picture of Kola Peninsula. And so it was okay for me. But it's, yeah, you have to deal with such things which aren't able to be controlled in advance, or yeah.
But in terms of vision and of visualizing again, this is also something I would throw in two contexts which we wanted to talk about today. Is that photography is by a long shot not the only visualizing tool anymore, or not the only engine of visualization, yes, as Patrick Maynard would say. We have all kinds of technologies that image the world, yes, and are able to kind of grasp objects and situations. And the Arctic is actually the place where these other technologies of visualization are put to a use at the extreme. Yes, you have all these radars that can map objects the size of a balls in human orbit. You have also dolphins that use sonars to explore the ocean floor. You have all kinds of technologies to kind of map the ocean floor in search of the resources that are not accessible right now, but everybody is waiting for them to be accessible when the ice cap melts, yes, or when the icebergs melt away. So, so your approach, the way that you show us the Arctic is only one of many, many ways that the Arctic is being visualized every moment in time, yes, yeah. And also for very pragmatic reasons, I would say, you know, like resource extraction, for example, but also climate research, for example. So we have the whole spectrum, yes, like from military to thinking about the future of the Earth. And the other thing that happens, that you did in when you showed us that's I'm searching for a word. It's not twisted, but rotated image of the globe is also changing the basic parameters of our understanding of the space of the Earth. Yes, because this changing of perspective, 90 degrees, it changes everything. Yeah? Because what we are used to is the Mercator map. Yes, where there is west and there is east, and Europe is in the middle. Yes. And the Antarctic is huge, and the Arctic is huge, but it's like it's blown out of proportion because it's stretched around the margins, yes. But when it becomes the center, there is no east or west. It's just around the pole, yes. And when we think of this as a passage that helps us circumnavigate the world, like you know, like in half the time that we need to go to through the Panama Canal, yeah. It's crazy because this is a perspective of the world that we don't normally have. Yeah? So it also shows us, for example, that Russia and the US are neighboring countries in the end. Yes, we don't see that normally, and it shows us how much this territory is like a new theater of operations. Yes, also changing these kind of categories that we were used to, and also there's a lot of discussion about it. I mean, Russian media are full of praise for the new northern route, because Russia has been building this huge fleet of icebreakers. They have the biggest fleet of nuclear icebreakers in the world, and they have already started, using that route as a kind of as a commercial route. Yes, and it's going only to expand. So suddenly our understanding of geopolitics also changes. That's what I'm aiming at, when we look at your project. But as you said in the beginning, you need to use a map to show it, because the pictures themselves, they're not able to kind of show the topography of the place.
Well, possibly with one photograph. So yeah, that's why you need sometimes additional materials or tools like texts or graphics, maps. And it's also because you mentioned Russia again. During my research, I also recognized that it's very important to include not only Western media but also Eastern media, because these are different approaches to the topic. That's why I also invited one writer who really has different opinions to the topic, and but I mean, I as a photographer or artist, I can't tell you what is wrong, what is right, or what's the right way, what is their solution. The only thing I can do is to create kind of or to start at least kind of a discourse based on my photographs, to sensitize the people for this topic. That's what I can do. But I never can say, and I don't want to say, this is right, this is wrong. So, but I'm happy if a discourse starts, and that's why I try to invite also different writers, for instance, especially here, with different opinions, because it's a very complex topic, so I can't answer everything, so that's not possible. And it's also not necessary.
But now you opened a very important other aspect of your work that I wanted to address during our conversation, which is artistic research or practice-based research, because for such a project to come into being, you need a lot of research to make this happen, to even understand, what these objects are, where they are, why you want to photograph them. And as we were talking while we were preparing for this conversation, you said that the research phase is much longer than the photographing phase, no? Exactly. And so maybe if you could talk a little bit more about that. And then you said that you were inviting people. And this is also why this book is so important, because it is the essays that frame your pictures, that allow these stories that you mentioned, these narratives that are spun around the pictures, to really come to surface, yes? Because if we just look at the pictures, I mean, it's really hard to get at what they're about, yes? But when we have the maps and we have the essays that contextualize them, and when we have the information, what they are about, then it all starts coming together as a picture, one much larger than a single photograph, no?
Yeah, well, how to start? I mean, the very start is a vague idea of a topic, and in this case, I mean, I wanted to realize a project which is dealing with the Arctic as a whole. I was in the Arctic before, for instance, for close to this series in Russia, in Siberia, and I'm personally fascinated by this region, but I was struggling with the topic itself. What can I do to combine the whole region? Which kind of story can I tell? And that's always the same with the project. So I need to find a topic, a concrete topic, and then I develop my concept. The next step, and that also needs months and sometimes years. Sometimes an idea needs to grow for several years. Then it's strong enough that I can concretely start to develop the concept. When I have the concept, I can start my research for particular locations which could be interesting, which are maybe accessible. I need to find the particular people or the responsible people who are able to make these decisions, and also I need to find out how, for instance, well, different armies are organized. So I need to find out who is responsible for what, and very often it's not only a single person who decides everything. So that's a long, long process that also needs months, and I have to follow parallel different ways. I can't only concentrate on one location, otherwise I lose all the time. So, it's important to know I have to finance all these projects on my own in advance. So that's a really risky approach. It costs a lot, and I never know if I'm able to refinance those projects afterwards because I don't know how the market is reacting. And it's not that decorative, so it's not so easy to sell such pictures. That's also an aspect, of course, because I have to live from it and feed my family. So yes, and that all needs months. And in parallel, I'm also thinking how a book could be, or how the dramaturgy of a book could be, and which people maybe could be interesting to add another interesting aspect or to enable another access to the topic. And I'm always working with different writers. Here's really many people included because it's so complex from the political point of view. In other books, maybe 2, 3 essays, but here's more, I think about 10 writers. So I'm realizing the project alone, but then in the end, I include lots of people, and it's like a little company existing for a year. So lots of people are involved in the book production then afterwards.
Yeah, and only what I meant is that only one of these essays is about you.
One art.
Yeah. So
essay. Yeah,
that's
true.
That is, I think, very important to kind of see that, yes, that you are very open and that you invite other contexts, and that it really becomes about the topic and about the issue, and these pictures then become kind of richer because of that context that you allow to construct around it. And I find it really amazing.
Because different people are involved. I mean, you have the scientists, you have not really politicians, but political scientists, journalists, sometimes art historians, or historians. For instance, one of those texts is comparing my photographic approach with, because you mentioned it before, with the explorers of the 19th century. They all had photographers with them, also with large format, but they had their own labs with them. In the 19th century, the photograph was a proof for the explorers, or for, let's say, the colonization maybe, so we have been here. That's of course not my aim, because I don't want to colonize anything, but the similar thing is I'm not only working with the same technique, but I also try to get an access and to enable an access for all the other people at home. That's something similar. That's also mentioned in the book here.
So it's a way of mediating the world. But maybe, because we've been at it for about an hour, maybe this is a good time to open the floor to questions. Maybe you have your questions yourselves and you would like to address them to Gregor.
Or to Christoph. Yeah. This thing is not really working automatically, I don't know.
It's not changing?
It stopped several times, huh? Yeah.
Hi.
Hey.
This is all amazing, but I have a question about something that we actually don't see in your pictures, in your work. So when I look at this, I think about how people who are working there, I imagine they spend a lot of time, like they have to leave their homes and families and spend months there. And the way you show it, it looks very monumental and futuristic and not very pleasant to be there. So maybe if you could tell us how people who live there and work there cope with this, like how do they make this place more cozy for them Like, is there any way to have a plant, for example, in a place you live in, or what people do to make it more you know, inhabitable? Yeah. Psychologically, because I know stories also from history about people exploring north. About it's very hard psychologically, and people often lose their minds. I've heard such stories, so I'm curious about this.
No, that's true. That's still a problem. It's a huge problem, also for people who have been born there. So they struggle a lot with the midnight sun, or also with especially with the polar nights. So suicide numbers are high. Alcohol and drug abuse is really a problem. Also for the indigenous people. So in Canada, lots of settlements, they have, it's forbidden to consume alcohol because the alcohol and drugs destroyed whole settlements, whole villages. It's not really a place, it's not really an inviting place. These are not places where you, or most of them, where you want to spend your holidays. So it's not really comfortable. Of course, in summer times it would be more inviting and more well, friendly. But I have chosen most of the times the winter months because of the light. That's maybe an aspect I didn't mention yet. So the light is very, very important within my photographs because the light combines different locations, and I'm always seeking this kind of twilight, this polar light as you see it here. So yes, and because people, yeah, it looks sometimes abandoned, but that's what I really need to mention. All these places are, not all are inhabited, but they are currently used. There's no abandoned places included because I'm not a lost place photographer. So it's in use and most of the time inhabited. I don't show people because for me this increases the surreal character of those places. Especially if you know that it is inhabited and there are people there. Of course I get in touch with the people on location, I exchange and hear the stories what they are telling, but they're struggling themselves a lot with living there. So also Inuit people, for instance, especially the young ones, is everywhere. There's no jobs or no future, and what to do up there. Last year I was because you mentioned a plant, I was for my new project, which will be published at the end of the year, again in Canada, at the Northwest Passage in Joya Haven. That's a settlement of about 1,500, with about 1,500 inhabitants. And I went there because they installed a pilot project called Norvik, where 3 ship containers are connected, where they try to grow their own food, plants, vegetables, greens and so on, which is possible, yeah? Despite the harsh conditions outside. They use renewable energy like wind and sun in the summertime, but usually nothing is growing there. You don't have any tundra, you don't have any trees, just some little grass, but in the long winter months it's just an ice desert where you can't really distinguish between the frozen ocean and the frozen landmass. So sometimes, I mean, regarding the oil companies, they get the people because they pay a lot. Yeah, it's the money. It's like in Russia. These gas towns in the north, further north than the Arctic Circle, young families move to these towns because they get paid well and because they offer also infrastructures like schools and kindergartens and so on. So they earn better than in cities further south. It's the money, yeah, very often, why people do this.
There is also this other aspect, which is the indigenous peoples that you just mentioned, no? That what you photograph are also colonial structures, in the sense that they are built by Western civilization in indigenous lands. And so they are gestures, they are violent gestures in this sense of taking over the land, yes? because there are people who have lived there for centuries, like the Inuit in Greenland, yes, and or the Sami in Norway. So
Everywhere, yeah. Also in Russia.
also in Russia, yes, the Buryats, and etc., etc. So when you want to have a look at this aspect, yesterday the Kiev Biennial opened at the Museum of Modern Art in Warsaw, and there's an amazing film by Mikola Rydny, which shows how the northern Russia, east of the Ural, was colonized as a part of, you know, industrial revolution, infrastructure and technology and resource extraction. Yes, and the cost for the indigenous population. He was using also local film archives and stuff like that to show that. So it's a really amazing and very strong project. There was a question from the people online. How long have you been working on this project? How much time did it take you?
Yeah, all in all, about between 4 and 5 years. So from the first conceptual phase until the book was laying on the table, yeah. That's the average time for my projects. Between 3 and 5 years generally, and here 4 or 5 years, yeah.
I would say that's quick for such a project.
Yeah, I was working intensively, yeah. But yeah, that's it. You need at least this time. Otherwise, it's just a series, and I can't tell a story, such a complex story within with I don't know 10 pictures. That's impossible. So it needs time, and that makes it challenging because yeah, to be consequent over such a long time. Even if you face lots of doubts and difficulties and problems and end up at dead-end roads when you invested lots of energy and time and then finally you fail, that's always part of the game, the failure. Yeah, it's part of the game, but it's often frustrating, yeah. So those years are not easy, especially also for my family at home when I'm getting nervous and yeah, so it's, yeah. But on the other hand, I see also a chance, because I know many people just give up because they can't stand it to work on a project for such a long time. And that enables me to create something individual on the market. Yeah? That's, of course, there existing lots of pictures also of these places and other places. The world is photographed, so as we know. So the more important are the stories, in my opinion, and also when we discuss about the whole IAA discussion, I'm not really worrying about that. Of course, when IAA is also telling us each story you want, of course, but the combination and I think as well, the more digitalized everything becomes, the more unique is again a single negative. In the end, it's nothing constructed or composed by an algorithm or something. So I recognized it already that people become aware again on analog photography because they like the grain and the charming grain, and go back. And even if lots of filters imitate analog photography, they recognize it again or more, or recovered it again. So that's what I sometimes get as a feedback. So maybe, I'm sure it is worth to be stubborn and to be consequent. It depends on how long analog material is produced. Yeah, we will see how long this is possible.
When it comes to analog, I would go into a quarrel with you, but maybe not today. Are there more questions from the audience?
Thank you for the presentation. It's really amazing and breathtaking. I was wondering, I really appreciate what you said, that you're not taking sides, that you're not saying what is right and what is wrong. And it really feels in these images. But you also mentioned that first when you showed the maps, I think that the maps were more scary than the images, because they showed that everything here, and also some of the images give that feeling of a huge preparation for a huge exploitation and a huge extraction that is yet to come. And of course, there are the main players, the geopolitical hero, not the heroes, no, the big players who will take the best of it and benefit from it most. And it feels that it's kind of getting into, the preparation is going on and that we have no control on that. We, I mean, the regular people. But you also mentioned that you do meet people there and you do see everyday life going on there, not just the military and research places, but just the north. And you also mentioned the unemployment. And the people are struggling, on the one hand, with the exploitation of their natural land, and the indigenous people suffer definitely from that. But also you mentioned the regular problems, like the unemployment. And several years ago, I listened to a conference in Iceland that was about the north, and there were panels for the scientists and there were panels for politicians, and I was really shocked how Greenland was presenting itself and kind of offering its the raw material assets for the people and for the investors to come, because they saw it as a chance for the future and for the people out there. So I guess you might also be facing all those contrasts, and I wanted to ask you how you're dealing with it, and how much do you feel that you have to kind of distance yourself from it, because it probably is difficult to take sides, or even your personal life. How are you dealing with that?
Now, of course, I'm now I see what is happening on this planet, and I recognize and that people often also ask me if I'm optimistic when I see the future. What I recognize is that even if we all know the consequences, or are already living in the middle of these consequences, we don't stop the process. No, the opposite. We increase the speed for this developments. That's what I recognized everywhere. And locals, they recognize the consequences too regarding the global warming, for instance. The Canadian, the settlements at the coast are struggling with the erosion because of the rising sea levels, the storms, the heavy winds, they become stronger and stronger, more and more, and those erosions, or the erosion lets the whole settlements disappear, so they lose land mass already. Or in Norway, for instance, the people told me they have so much more snow than in the past because it's getting warmer. And the air is wet, because usually it doesn't snow that much up there because it's just too cold. So, and on the other hand, of course, they are interested in new jobs, and some people are ready to paying the high price. Greenland, because you mentioned Greenland, is something special because they have the problem that they want to be independent from Denmark. But they can't survive alone. And yeah, we've heard Trump's message that he wants to buy Greenland, and I mean, it's crazy, but it's impossible. But of course, he's interested in, because of the raw materials as well. China already invested in future airport projects in Greenland. If they ever will be realized, we will see. But the licenses for the raw material deposits are really interesting, rare earth, for instance. So yeah, they're selling their country on the one hand to become independent, but I'm not sure, I'm afraid that won't solve anything. They go from one independence to the next one. So it's difficult as an outsider who's coming from the rich Europe, for instance, which is another planet for those people. If you're talking with Inuits in Canada, it's just a vague, they heard something about Europe. They don't know what Austria is, of course. I'm used to that. Nobody knows what Austria is. It's too small. But but they don't even have a real idea of Europe. It's very far away. And so I, I try to stay optimistic on the one hand. On the other hand, it's a motive for me to tell those stories, to show the people without showing with the finger, hey, look what is going on. Even if it's far away from the geographical point of view, it influences us directly here in front of our doors. So that's what I try to reach. But I recognize that my optimism slowly gets less and less because I don't recognize any positive things, the opposite, more and more. And yeah, that's what I can't understand, how destructive mankind is. So that's really a problem. But I won't stop working on those things. So that's why the next project is something more positive to deal with that, because the personal price from the physical, physical and also psychological or mental point of view is high. Yeah? I didn't see that much pain or victims in the north that I've seen, for instance, in Africa and so on, even if I didn't show those people or made these world press photos. But I have to carry these pictures with me, and I have to deal with it. And the price is high, and it costs lots of energy because I can't forget those things. And but I don't show these things. So what I show is what you've seen now. That's something regular, what you can find in all my projects. Is that okay? Okay.
One could also say that, you see one of the texts in your book tells about the paradox of the Arctic. Yes, that on the one hand, we're all talking about global warming and that it is a danger and a risk, and at the same time, what you disclose to us is like a new El Dorado. Yes, I mean there are loads of people, institutions waiting for the ice to melt to really be able to kind of use that. Yes, so for them it's like it's a chance. Yes, and then when we think of various ways of like how can we save the Earth, well, there is degrowth as a strategy, yes, which is really hard because how can we consume less? How can we, have less? How can we want less? All these things that seem to be impossible in advanced capitalism. And on the other hand, there's accelerationism, yes? I mean, we go faster because we will find some way to make this work, yes? So this is the kind of accelerationist route, yes? We're gonna sail quicker, we're gonna get the goods from China to Europe quicker, at half the price, it's going to be great, So yeah, I can imagine that this is a terrifying perspective when you think of that way.
Yeah, and I mean, you can try something as a single person. Of course, I know I can't change the world, but at least I can try it. And if one person is thinking in a different way, I succeeded already. So that gives me new energy for the next step or for the next project. But doing nothing is no alternative for me. So, and I'm not an activist. So that's what I don't want to be. But I also can't only deal with topics which are everything and nothing. So I want to tell stories with a massive, with an important background. So yeah.
So as you have shown during this discussion and presentation, you are making this happen. I mean, you are participating in the discussion, not in a kind of direct way, but I think it gave us all a lot to think about. So thanks for coming. Thank you, Gregor, for this discussion.
Thank you too, Christoph. Thank you.